I just realized that I had left my Audacity recording since
Oh God.
Thursday.
Oh
So
dear Lord.
gonna go ahead and
Yeah.
quit that.
Yep.
Why do I have so many tabs open?
Man, I can't get into your tab life over here.
Can't answer that.
You know how many tabs I have open? 4.
It doesn't help me, Scott. It doesn't help me trying to figure out why do I have so many tabs open?
Well, I mean, Matt, I don't want to assume your character, but perhaps the behavior that led to you leaving your thing recording for 5 days is similar to the behavior that opens thousands of tabs and never closes them.
Let's just agree to call it a lapse in judgment. The tab situation was so bad that I almost wonder if this was a sort of like crash recovery thing where it just opened a lot of tabs.
I love
It's
that
definitely
you're like desperate to blame anything but yourself here.
it definitely didn't open all these tabs.
Hello and welcome to Flanagan's Wake, a Doof Media podcast watching, analyzing, and discussing the collective works of Mike Flanagan and Henry James, apparently. My name is Scott Daly, and I am your host, and joining me, as always, coming at you live from the great good place itself, it's Matt Freeman. How's it going today, Matt? How's it out there in that place? Is it that great, that pretty good place?
How did you reach me here?
I don't look.
This defies the whole purpose of the place.
Well, like you weren't responding to my emails, so
You violated the sanctity of the place.
I'm so sorry,
Scott. They're coming for you.
Who?
Scott, run!
I don't know. I got to do a podcast.
You didn't catch the dark undertones of the great good place. How do you think they keep it so great and good?
The fee.
That's right.
Do you think the money he spends at the great good place is subtracted from his real bank account?
Yes.
It's a raw deal. If you have no idea what we're talking about, then you did not prepare for this week's episode, because this time on the show, our time with Mr. Henry James, sir, was he knighted? It's Mr.
I don't know.
Our time with Henry James continues as we take a look at 3 of James's short stories that appear as titles in Mike Flanagan's The Haunting of Hill House. This week, those stories are The Great Good Place, The Two Faces, and The Way It Came. Matt, this will surely be our most popular series of episodes we've ever done.
Yeah. I mean, it's almost clickbait going for those Henry James clicks, right?
Yeah, I mean, he is like the sexy, like Taylor Swift of the literary world, like everyone wants a piece. The Henry James Eras tour is popping off. I mean, we got all the eras here. We got 1900, we got 1896, we got 1900 again. We got all of them.
Yep. It's gonna be a great thumbnail though. Henry James.
Yeah, all joking aside, I kind of, Matt, have over the past couple of weeks absolutely fallen in love with Henry James writing. And that's part of what I want to discuss as we get into these stories in particular, because I'm not even quite sure why that is. I'm just having a great time. And part of it may be just, we've been doing this format of show for a long time, and we don't usually cover stories like this. And so maybe it's just the refreshing feeling of doing something kind of new that's carrying me through this. But I've just been having a great old time reading these stories. I am really, really having a fun time with this.
Well, it's funny because whenever we cover short stories, we have a great time, and then we're like, wow, that was amazing. I love that. We should do that again. And then we don't do it for 2 years.
Yeah.
But just setting that aside, I think w- Henry James is very interesting and fresh and fun in a number of ways. It's funny. I called him I was thinking about him. I called him fresh in my mind, and I was like, fresh for an author who's been dead for 200 years or whatever.
Okay, that's
But there's something that feels fresh about him, right? Like,
yeah,
to our sensibility, it feels modern, actually.
yeah,
So something I said to you earlier is I was like, I can't explain why, but his writing feels surprisingly Gen X. Um, and I think what I mean is something to do with like his approach to the world, the sort of level of self consciousness that he brings to it, and the subject matter that he focuses on, a
yeah.
combination of those things.
Yeah, I think I would agree with that. I think it's funny when you said this to me originally. You said, "No, I will not explain further," and then you said it on the podcast. So now you have to attempt to explain yourself further.
Yeah.
It's very funny when you said that. Like I just immediately glommed onto an image of our third story that we're going to be reading today, titled "The Way It Came," and it's just Christian Slater and Winona Ryder having an absurd argument. And it's like it's perfect. It's just perfect imagery in my head. So I think you're spot on there.
And then as soon as you said that, I could picture the whole scene perfectly. Yeah.
Yeah. So I mean, it is. I think fresh is a great word. I was talking to my sister about James because she heard we were doing this, and we're like, I tried with that guy, I couldn't get through it. I found him incredibly dry, and it's like. It's not that I disagree that his writing can be dry and sometimes difficult to parse. What I told her, and my recommendation for our listeners, if you are struggling to get through this, is like read every sentence as if it was dripping with irony and sarcasm. And look, I don't even know if that's a correct read on what James is doing. Like we talked a lot about this with Return to the Screw last week. I think we're going to talk about it a lot with these three short stories this week. I don't know if that's the quote unquote correct read of what Henry James is trying to do with some of these stories, but it just permeates the story for me. Just like it seems like he's having a laugh with a lot of these stories at some of the behavior of these people. And that just tickles me in a way that I'm just delightfully turning pages waiting to see what happens next.
Yeah, I think sarcasm, irony, and self-awareness, like I said a second ago,
yes,
which is kind of the Gen X trifecta, really. So,
no, you're so right. You're so right.
Yeah.
So we're going to get into these short stories in just a minute. Before we do that, though, we did have one pretty exciting announcement we wanted to talk to you folks about. I think we talked about this on the very end of last week's show, but we know you guys. You don't listen to our outro. We see the stats. So we wanted to talk about it here. We wanted to trap you at the beginning of the show. Don't you? No, you're reaching for that skip ahead 30-second button, and don't do it. Matt, you want to talk about what we're doing here?
Yeah.
Here at Duke Media.
So as everyone knows, we have another podcast where we cover movies and books of a wide variety. We just wrapped up talking about Paul Thomas Anderson over there, and now we're pivoting to our next feature, which is going to be decided by you, our listeners. So in this particular case, I have created a website called doofmovies.com. Hopefully easy to remember, doofmovies.com. You go there, you log in with your Patreon credentials. Even if you're not a Patreon of ours, you can still log in, and you can rank your favorite movies of this century so far. You can easily create your own ranking from the available list of movies, or you can add movies. And then what happens is your personal ranking, if you are a paid patron of Doof Media, will be integrated into the total ranking. There's a not that complicated algorithm that basically does a weighted voting thing based on where you have ranked the movie in your personal ranking. And then what we're going to do after these votes have firmed up a little bit more, which shouldn't take long, we're going to start covering the movies that are sitting at the top of the list. And Scott and I will talk about probably a good solid 25 of these movies once y'all have had a chance to vote. And this will be the definitive list of the best movies of the 21st century.
Yeah, I think that was kind of the original kernel of the idea. Was it's 2025, we're a quarter of the way through the century. There's been quite a lot of movies so far this century. Wouldn't it be fun to do a top 25 films of the century? And we thought about do we want to just make our own list? Do we want to have you make a list and me make a list, and how we do that? And we thought it would be most fun if we just, as a collective, as Doof Media, both podcasters and listeners, came up with the definitive Doof Media list, and this is how we're doing it. So Matt will make a list as well. I will make a list, and the weights of those lists will go into this process, just like with everyone else. And yeah, then we'll see what we got. It's pretty cool. It's pretty exciting. As Matt said, you do not need to be a patron of Doof Media to just make your own list. If you're looking for like a way of, if you just want to go through the exercise of what are my 25 favorite movies of the century, well, here's a great list of a bunch of them, so I can look through that list and see, hey, do I like that one? How do I feel about Pop Star Never Stopping? Is that number one like it is for Scott? I don't know. So you could do that, and yeah, as Matt said, if you are a patron at any of our levels, you get to be part of the group of people who decide what makes up the list, which I think is really cool.
Right. At the very least, right now, without even logging in or doing anything, you can just go to doofmovies.com and look at the current rankings. And if you see something that just seems terribly unfair in those rankings, maybe that will motivate you to log in and contribute your own votes to the global ranking.
Yeah. So, for example, as we record this very possibly will have changed by the time you're listening to this. But as we are sitting down to record this, The Lord of the Rings: The Return of the King is number one on our list. Not terribly surprising given our listener base. But if you disagree with this because you're Sauron, go vote and change it.
Yeah. Mean Girls is number 10. So
I think that's pretty cool.
It's a lot of people might want to know that.
I like that movie.
Yeah.
I like that. But Mean Girls better than Avengers Endgame.
Yeah. Currently.
Better than Zodiac?
Better than Zodiac, better than The Tree of Life.
Well, I mean,
better than apparently much better than No Country for Old Men.
Well, so you know why it's No Country for Old Men? Because there's a bunch of mean girls.
That's right.
Okay. So yeah, check that out. It's doofmovies.com, all one word, no spaces, all that jazz. Check that out and help us compile this list, please.
Yep. Thank you.
All right, Matt, let's get into it. Let's talk about our short stories for the week. We begin with The Great Good Place. This was a story first published in Scribner's Magazine in the year 1900. You think they had like a Y19 party?
I'm sure they did. Yeah. I bet it was huge, actually.
They worried about having to reset their
chronometers.
I'm glad you had a word because I wasn't going to come up with anything. So this story was written about, at least it was published about 2 years after The Turn of the Screw, which we talked about last week. And this one, Matt, I struggled with a little bit. I think out of the three this week, this is the one I struggled with the most. I don't know if you agree with that or not. The essential content of this story is there's a man, I believe he's a writer, named George Dane. He wakes up having gone to bed without finishing some of his work, and he looks at his desk and he looks at the pile of work that has piled up on his desk and just basically gets completely overwhelmed. He's got too much work to do, too much social obligations, too much of everything, and he's completely overwhelmed. He gets a young surprise visitor to come eat breakfast with him. He basically says to the visitor, hey, you want to be me, right? Would you like to be me for a little while? The guy accepts, and then suddenly George finds himself at a spa, country club, rest resort thing, where he spends the next 3 weeks. At the end of that 3 weeks, he suddenly wakes up back in his office, having spent the last 8 hours just sleeping in his office, and he feels rested and rejuvenated. And he looks over and sees his work kind of organized, and he feels that his life is just a little bit more manageable now. So this has supernatural elements like The Turn of the Screw did, or maybe possibly doesn't, like The Turn of the Screw did. Once again, we are playing with ambiguity here because the book is kind of very loose on, did George dream all this? did this really happen? Is there a magical reward resort for overworked people? Or is it just made up and in his head? Matt, what'd you think of this one?
This was my most unfavorite of the three. Uh, um, so I had difficulty with this one. This one, the prose was so difficult to parse for me
Yeah.
that sometimes I would kind of just give up on a sentence and just be like, maybe I'll have better luck with the next sentence, and this will become more clear to me as I go. And the funny thing is, after I finished it, I kind of had this feeling of, I have no idea what I just read. This is when I sent you the meme of Homer Simpson going, brilliant, I have no idea what's going on. And then I read the summary of what the story was about because I was like, I feel stupid. I want to know, what the hell did I just read? And it was like exactly what I thought it was. So
Yeah.
apparently I absorbed it correctly. I just felt very confused and unsure the whole time. And part of that is that I couldn't tell like what genre we were in. So I was so convinced that he was either being like preyed upon or like tricked by the Fae, or that he was like dead and in heaven now. And I had all these theories about what was going on. And then in the end, I actually just settled on it being like, oh, I think Henry James just kind of felt overwhelmed and had like a fantasy looking out the window of what it would be like to have somebody take his place for a bit, and that was kind of rejuvenating to him. And then he was like, that's kind of a fun idea, and you wrote it down, and that was what it was.
Yeah, I think it's no accident that George Dane is a writer. I think you're absolutely right. This is how a writer who is feeling overwhelmed with his life and his work emotionally deals with that.
Yeah.
Is he writes a story in which a man is given the gift of time off and time away. It is fun, and it's a very supernatural idea that like you could see a modern equivalent do this very differently. But with the same general scope of the idea, I think you're right that it is very difficult to kind of feel your way through this story because you don't know what he's necessarily going to do, and you do find yourself, and I do think James is playing with that a little bit. Like the bulk of the story is just George kind of taking in this place that he's at and chatting with people about it, and chatting with like the mystery of what's going on here. Like, do you remember how we got here? No, I don't. Where are we? And like part of it, like George is spending a fair amount of time trying to figure out, where is this place located? I'm trying to ascertain by the weather where we could possibly be in England right now. But there's a lot of like, I think I agree with you that there's a lot of conversations with his quote unquote brothers in this story that I was like, am I just missing what the fuck they're talking about here? Because I'm not really sure. And so there might be a lot of like rich theming that I just didn't pick up on here. But I do really like the general sentiment of just, hey, life is sometimes overwhelming, and just like the wistful daydream of, wouldn't it be great if there was a way to just take some time off from it all, to just press pause or go somewhere else or do something else, and coming back and how just that just doing that, like it is essentially like, man, I wish I could go on vacation, only it's like the great thing of you can do a big long vacation and no time has actually passed. It's
Right.
like it's a workaholic's version of a vacation, because like any normal person would just be like, hey, Henry, just take a fucking vacation. And Henry would probably be like, well, but then I'd come back and all this time would have passed and I would have even more work to do.
Yeah. Right.
Whereas this is, I can take a vacation and also freeze my workload, essentially.
Yeah, it's a magic. That's exactly right. His workload is taken on by someone else. So
yeah,
he is, because that's the fear, right? If you're going to go on vacation and you're a busy person, you're like, well, this just means I have to do even more when I get back. And
yeah, everyone can feel like the encroaching terror of your email box your first day after being on a vacation, and how many freaking emails am I going to have to deal with? I deal with that anxiety, by the way, by just constantly checking my email the entire time I'm on vacation, which is of course the best way to do
that. Right. Me too. It's like the modern equivalent would be like you just so we all know, we've all tried to like put our phone away and think like, that's going to feel good to not have access to my phone.
Yeah.
And that doesn't work. But imagine that there was like a perfectly trusted person that you could hand your phone to and be like, this is your responsibility.
Yeah.
Whatever notifications show up on this thing, entirely your responsibility. I never even want to hear about it.
Yeah.
And then you go live your life. That would be the dream. And of course, that's impossible. That's a fantasy. So he speaks to us. I think it's actually great. Like as much as I had trouble with the story in the reading of the story, it's such a relatable, like solid, boiled down kernel of a thing that we can relate to it, even though I'm talking about this glass magic brick and he's talking about his pile of correspondence on his desk. But it's like exactly the same concept, and he nails the feeling of it perfectly.
Yeah, and one thing I really, really do appreciate about this is like there's a lot of like nostalgic, wistful look back to our past, not just our personal past, but the past of like human existence as a whole, and being like, oh man, I'm feeling stressed by my life right now. Wouldn't it be so wonderful to go back in time where life was much simpler? People didn't feel as like there wasn't as many responsibilities. There wasn't like the world wasn't as complex as the world is right now. And I think this serves as a good reminder of like, no, like it's people have always felt stressed. They've always felt overwhelmed. They've always felt overworked. Like this is just a timeless experience, and this is, I think, will be as relatable to it was when Henry James wrote it to now 125 years later to 125 years from now. This is just a kernel of truth that is the human experience of, I feel overwhelmed. It would be wonderful to be able to take a break, but like a magic break, essentially. Really love that.
I agree. I mean, broadly across all three stories, we'll probably bring it up again. That timelessness really is one of the key features of Henry James. I mean, maybe we were lucky in picking these three stories. I don't know, but there's some kernel in all three of these stories we're going to talk about today where I was like, this could be adapted into a story that takes place in 2025, and you would totally retaining the kernel of the dramatic core of the thing.
Yeah.
I'm not going to do the exercise right now, but you could take each one and make a story that felt exactly the same while being about a modern set of people.
I want to put a pause on that.
Yeah.
Not that we have to stop talking about that with this story, but I want to just make a mental note of that to circle back around to that with the next story, because I do think there's things very specifically of their time in these stories that also manage to be universal and timeless, which is pretty fascinating, actually.
Yeah.
But no, I agree. It's just like once you get past, and I think Henry James might just be the type of author that, like, I think you said this last week for The Turn of the Screw, that like multiple readings is just kind of mandatory, because I do think once you parse what this story is and what the story isn't, like I didn't reread through this entire story after I finished it and had kind of processed what it was, but I did like skim through it again a second time. And once you're allowed to kind of get out of your own way of like, what is this? Is this a bad place? Like is the great good place meant to be ironic or not? And like once you get all that out and you realize that this is actually a story with like really no conflict, relatively little plot, and it's just a wouldn't it be nice experience, like the perfect thing for a short story. You know, every time we talk about short stories, we talk about the fact that there are these rules to storytelling, there's these rules to long form storytelling that a short story can often kind of circumnavigate in a lot of ways, that they can just get around the rule. And just like, there's no conflict here, there's no plot, it's just a thing happens, and you don't get frustrated by it because you only spent 30 pages on it instead of 300 or whatever.
Yeah. I mean, that was one feeling I had is, you know, we used to do this podcast called So-Called Writers, where we would talk about we would basically do flash fiction and then talk about the flash fiction. And
Hmm.
there's been several generations of that podcast that has gone on without our involvement. Currently, it's called You Write Pod, and we have no involvement with it at all. But go check out You Write Pod if you want to go write some flash fiction. But
Yeah.
anyway, the reason I bring it up is like there was always something refreshing about writing these 30-minute flash fictions where it's like something that strikes you for whatever reason, and you write it, and you can you go back and reflect on it, or read other people's flash fiction, and it's just like, that tickles me in a way that I
Yeah.
never thought about. But there's something relatable about it. There's something interesting. You would never write a novel about this because
Yeah.
fundamentally it's just not. It's like a moment, right? It's like, oh, you captured a moment, you captured a feeling. That was the point of the, and that's what I think that's what Henry James is doing with this story in particular. This more than the other two is sort of a piece of flash fiction, right?
Yeah.
Almost more so than short story, I would say. It's like it's a little bit almost more avant-garde than a short story. I mean, it technically has an arc to it, but really it's just about this idea of escaping to the fantastical land of the great good place.
Yeah. I think it is also pretty fascinating to me what this perfect place that Henry James has invented is and what it is not, because it's not like a paradise, right? It's not like perfect, everything's wonderful, everything's perfect. No, it's actually very mundane and simple. It's like we talked about in the intro. It's kind of like a country club. It's kind of like a day spa. It's kind of like a resort. Things still cost money there, which we joked about. Like you have to pay for your services. You have to pay for your time there and for services you get. It is very mundane and simple and non-fantastical. The fantastical part is, how the hell did you get here, and why is time not moving the same way? But like even the name, the Great Good Place, right? Like it's not paradise. It's good. It's very good. It's like greatly good, but it's just good. It's just nice. And I think that reflects this like, again, this really human, relatable thing where like, I think we've talked about this before, but have you ever like been overwhelmed and you're like maybe going on a business trip, walking through the airport, or maybe even just like going to get lunch at work, and you see people that clearly are either about to go on a vacation or just not on work today, and you're just like, damn it, I wish I was you. And it's like, I don't even need to be like going to a great, fantastical, wonderful place. I just don't want to be here doing this. I would take anything, just sitting in a chair chatting with someone, and that's all I want, as compared to this.
Yeah, I love that. I'm glad you mentioned the title, because it's sort of it's sort of our tendency to assume that anything that old is kind of like twee and ridiculous. And so you read the title, The Great Good Place, and you think like, oh, well, that's just like the kind of language they used. But actually it's kind of self-consciously like a silly name, I would say.
Mm-hmm.
Like Henry James knows that calling it The Great Good Place is kind of silly, right? It's kind of absurd, right?
Yeah.
And it makes the whole thing feel kind of light and fun. That's not necessarily the first impression I had of the title, but after you've read the story, you go back and you read the title, and you're like, yeah, it's kind of meant to be a joke, like or at least come off as a little silly, I would say.
Yeah, I mean, so the other character refers to the place as the Great Want Met, right? That's the name he has for it. So just this idea that the thing we all want, the thing we all need, is just a place where we can detach from things every once in a while, and that's all it is. And so in that context, like the Great Good Place, the great part is perhaps like the thing I want more than anything is just a good place, right? It's like I think you're so right in the like the tone of the name, and I think that helps you get into the tone of the story. Like, again, just getting into the micro a little bit here, I really love the opening where we have this guy, we're meeting this guy, he's completely overwhelmed. His servant, whatever, walks in, and they're kind of like verbally sparring with each other. And he's kind of being a dick to him. And the guy's like, "What do you want me to do? What, like, what, you told, like," and he's like, are you okay, sir? Because he's so overwhelmed that he's not even like remembering things. He's like, "You told me to let this guy come for breakfast this morning."
Uh-huh.
And like, it's also, speaking of relatable, like the perfect, someone just reminded you of a meeting. Like, you're looking through your day and you're completely overwhelmed, and then someone stops by and is like, "Oh yeah, are you ready for the meeting in 20 minutes?" You're like, "Fuck."
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, so it's one of those things where, yes, I agree that all of that is great. Although I admit that my first pass through the story, everything felt so dire that I was like, "Who is this visitor? Is it Satan come to offer him, a bargain? Like,
Yeah.
what are we doing?" And it's like, no, this is what you just said. It's just like, no, everything is dire because that's how you feel.
Yeah.
When you just got out of the meeting and now there's another meeting, right? You're just like,
Yeah. Yeah.
So yeah,
One
like you
thing,
said, benefits from a reread.
yeah, definitely. So was the guy, like, the guy that came, was he connected to the great good play? I guess let's just throw our cards on the table. Like, do you think is your interpretation of this is a thing that actually happened to him, or this was just a dream that he had while he took a day nap?
So it's unclear how it could simply be a dream, because this guy did actually come to his house, right? And like
Yeah,
did actually sit at his desk and
and did his work. Yeah,
did his work somehow.
but like, so is the guy connected to the place? The magic of the place and the guy are connected? Or, because that's one thing that, like, the story tries to be like, "Oh, this is just some young upstart in the industry that is looking up to you," and is like, once again, a very relatable thing of when you're trying to break into something, you can't even look at someone's being overwhelmed. You're like, "I wish I had that much work to do," especially something specifically like writing and creating in this thing. Is like, the people on the outside looking in on it are like, "I wish I had that much to do. That would mean I was successful." And
Uh-huh.
like, so there's a read that guy is not related to any of the things that happen, and that's just another person that is like looking on the outside, like desperately wanting to be part of this whole thing. Like, that is, I know myself in younger times, I would definitely been that person. Like, "Oh, I wish,
Yeah.
I would love to have your level, your workload."
I mean, if I have to choose one, if I have to choose one interpretation, then I would say I lean toward it being a dream. And he gets the effect of a whole 2 week vacation in the form of a dream laying on his couch, because that's how much stress he was under, and that's how good it feels to have that
Yeah.
removed from his shoulders. That's that's
Yeah.
kind of how I feel.
And one thing I love about it is just like, it's not like anything happens. Like, this is again why it gets to be a short story and not a novel. Is like, nothing happens to him while he's in the great good place that like reframes his mind and allows him to like unlock like the secret of efficiency or even just mindset. It's just, he just gets to chill. Like, that's it. Like, that's all that happens there, is he gets to chill, and he like chats with people about, their workload, and it feels a kinship with everyone else is there, that they're all people of the same cloth that are feeling exhausted and overwhelmed, and they just need a break. And that's what they talk about essentially, is like we've earned this break. But also, like, I think one thing I really liked of what I think the George Dane character says is that his curse is success. That like, the more successful he's become, the more work he has. And I just like, this is so Henry James, of this pretty successful author, that's like, I am overwhelmed by my success. The more success you have, the more expectations that are put on you, the more people that want to meet with you. Like you have the work, and then you have the social obligation. You have all these things connecting. I just loved all of that. And again, I love that he gets out of this thing. He gets out of these 3 weeks. He's got the rest and relaxation, but there was no great secret unlocked. And it's just, I look over at my desk. I see some of my work was done. I see my desk has been tidied and neatened. And just with that relaxation, I feel this newfound sense of I can manage this. I am in control of this. I can do this. And that is what a break sometimes affords you. I know if my cousin is like a researcher and writing a book on sabbaticals and the importance of sabbaticals, and everyone should take sabbaticals. So I think he would agree with this wholeheartedly. And I would definitely take a sabbatical if I could freeze time and not have to do any of that work. That'd be great.
Yeah. It's one way to get this feeling is, be working for several days, have so many files open, so many windows and folders and documents, email, calendar, and then your computer crashes and it's all gone. Bye-bye.
Yeah. That is
then-
one way of relaxing yourself. Sure.
And you're like, I'm sure there was something really important, but it's gone now, and I'll never get it again. So
Yeah.
yeah. Anyway.
My version of the great good place is every time I quit a job to move to a new job, because there's always that like 2 to 3 week lag period where you're like, oh my God, my to-do list is truly empty.
Yeah.
I have there's nothing expected of me.
Right.
It's remarkable.
I remember the first time I ever quit a job, and I left, and it was just like, oh, okay, all those teetering towers that I was, keeping in place with that continual effort, suddenly realizing like those aren't my responsibility anymore.
Yeah. I don't have to do that ever again. It's delightful.
Yeah. Right. Exactly.
Maybe that says something. I mean, I think one thing we could step back and say, like, maybe this says something larger about the state of humanity and how we handle workloads and things like that.
Yeah.
That this is a timeless, eternally relatable thing says something about us.
Yeah.
I think
we just take on more and more until it's all we can take. Right.
Yep.
Yeah.
One thing I think that I did want to make sure we talk about before we move on is I do think the way Henry James structures things, I've been paying a lot of attention to now that we're on 4 stories read by him and written by him. Sorry. And one thing that I think does not help the confusion of what's going on in the story and what kind of story we're in is he chooses to do this very specific thing in this story where he meets with a young man. He basically goes and shakes the young man's hand who he's meeting for breakfast. And then, bam, we're in the great good place. It's been a week and George has been there just chilling. And then, and only then, like he has a conversation with the brother. And then slowly over a few pages after that, he like fills us in on what happened with the meeting with the young man. And then getting here, like he really wants to throw you in media res with a lot of this stuff, and then kind of very, very slowly and deliberately like backfill. I think we're about to talk about the 2 faces, and I think essentially he does the exact same thing here, where he throws us in the thick of it in that story, and then kind of leaves us to our own devices to kind of try to piece everything together from there. It is an interesting device. I think it definitely creates challenge and confusion and kind of puts you off kilter a little bit.
Well, in this one, so I'm trying not to be too negative about this story, because again, I kind of feel like it does what it needs to do, but I think the other 2 are better at like the language doesn't get between you and the story.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas in this first one that we're wrapping up, I think the language totally gets in the way of the story. The structure, I think, even gets in the way of the story. Whereas in contrast, in these latter 2, the structure is him kind of drawing you in, knowing, short stories are different from novels in a lot of ways, but one of the ways in which they're different is you've got to sort of make the sale really quickly because well, not that you don't have to make the sale really quickly with a novel, but typically if you even pick up a novel in the first place, it's because you've heard something good about it or it's been recommended to you or what have you.
Mhm.
Rarely are you like flipping, the equivalent of flipping through a magazine or a short story collection, deciding what to start on, maybe reading a couple paragraphs and then bouncing, right? That's kind of the challenge of the short story. And he knows that. So he formats his short stories, his short fiction in a way that I actually think is designed to kind of give you a little welcome mat for you to like step into the story where it's approachable. And then once you're in, once you're curious, once you feel a little bit oriented, then he kind of opens the side door and then leads you
Mhm.
this way. And
Yeah.
and he's doing a great job. I feel the same. The thing he does with framing stories, I think, is a big part of this. He's sort of telling you what you're getting into and
Yeah.
intriguing you before he actually starts telling you.
Yeah,
Um,
most of these stories were published in magazines, right?
yeah,
And in periodicals. So like you can kind of imagine the framing story as like the first page, the cover page, like there's and that meant to pull you in immediately and make you want to turn the next page. It's like, oh, okay, I see what this story is going to be about. All right, let's
yeah.
go.
Well, especially, I mean, this is a good segue to this next story. Do you want to just do that? Because I have like a
Yeah,
specific thing I wanted to say about this next story and the framing story.
no, let's do that.
Yeah.
So the next story is The Two Faces, um, which was first published in Harper's Bazaar and also in the year 1900. This one I think is interesting, Matt. So I think it's interesting the way this and The Great Good Place compare to each other, given that they were both published in the exact same year. The Two Faces is Henry James' shortest story. It is the shortest story he wrote. It is, I think, 11 pages long, and it was like a designed short story. Like he set out to kind of as almost a response to some of the criticism of him that he can be lengthy and verbose. He set about to make a story that was very contained and short, and it is kind of like, I'm so glad we've gotten to read a few short, like if this was the first one we had read, I don't think I would have fully appreciated it, but like seeing this compared to the other longer stories and the way that it's not that the language is any less difficult to parse in places, but you can kind of see him almost pushing up against the edges of like, oh, I don't want to go too much into that. I have to. I'm like, it's like a project of myself that I am trying to contain myself to 10 pages or something.
Mm-hmm. And now in this moment, I realize I was thinking about the third story when it comes to the framing story, but whatever.
Yeah, I was gonna say I don't remember this one of
Yeah.
a framing story. I was like, oh god,
No.
did I forget the framing
No,
story? But
I
we'll get there. It's
this is
fine.
my
It's
mistake.
fine.
Yeah,
Yeah.
we will talk about that. But yeah, I agree with you. This one, possibly, it definitely was very, very readable. I felt like this one out of the three, I think probably had some of my favorite writing in a prose sense, where
Yes.
there would be just some incredibly beautiful sentence on the level of like how it sounds, the effectiveness of it in communicating like a really nuanced idea and feeling, and then how that fit into a larger paragraph of similar sentences and how they kind of flow together. I didn't, I am reading all of these, not audiobooking them, but this was one where I did find myself thinking like this this story would be a fun one to listen to
Yeah.
because of
Yeah.
how um beautiful the language kind of felt in my brain.
I
Um,
agree. This is also one that I think it is. I had a lot of fun with. I
mhm,
think this is a very fun story. So just a refresh for everyone. The concept of the story is we meet a gentleman named Shirley Sutton who is in kind of negotiations, I guess you could call them, to court a woman named Mrs. Grantham. The story begins in like the middle of some of their maybe final arrangements of how this is going to work, when out of the blue a servant shows up and says that Lord Gwynthor, who is a former lover of Mrs. Grantham, who like 6 months ago just kind of jilted her and skipped town, has returned and he wants to meet with her. And turns out he's married and he wants Mrs. Grantham to be the person that presents his new wife to society, that befriends her, introduces her to society, guides her through society. Um, and so this is basically like he has broken like every rule of society. Like he screwed this woman over, and now he's coming unannounced to her house, and then he's asking a favor of her related to his new wife. He's breaking all kinds of norms, and this is kind of what I meant, that this is a story that very much sits in the concept and the idea of late 19th century, early 20th century London, but also I think is just very timeless in that, like, man, you don't fuck a chick over and then ask her to be best friends with your new girl. Like, come on, man, you know better than that. But I think what I love so much about the story is that Sutton basically decides, I'm still unsure about this woman, and I am going to kind of use how she deals with this situation as almost a litmus test of what kind of person she is. And he watches as this woman makes this big effort to introduce the Lady Gwynthre to society in the most over-the-top, garish, and disgusting dress possible, basically ruining her. That she will never be accepted in society. She is absolutely ruined. And he sees on her face, a face that he finds beautiful and enchanting, he sees in her face something he doesn't even know how to fully describe it. It's not like textually like ugly. It's just it bowls him over. And I think that the text specifically talks about how like the face is kind of a window to the truth of a person, and he's seeing kind of the true side of her, and he's kind of horrified and just gets the fuck out of there.
Yeah. Well,
and
yeah,
I loved this story.
You know what? One thing I like what you said a bit ago about him trying to make this short, because he's actually very minimalist in what he describes, right? He doesn't, it's about these two. It's called the two faces, but we get. I don't want to misspeak because I don't remember exactly, but I feel like he doesn't even describe the faces. What we really get is like, we get to know the situation. We get to know this woman. We don't get to know Lady Gwynthre quite as well at all, but we know this man. We understand these people really well, really quickly. We've all kind of met people like this. Maybe we've even been in a situation vaguely like this, or seen a situation vaguely like this. So like you're picturing the face without needing to have it described to you. You understand that she is incredibly angry and full of hate for this guy.
Yeah.
Incredibly jealous and full of petty vengeance and hate for this woman, and is getting some kind of dark pleasure out of the idea that she's going to ruin this woman's introduction to society, and by proxy hurt the man who hurt her. And just the level of like coldness and calculatedness required to like put on the happy face to agree to do this, and then go through with it and actually kind of ruin this poor girl's life, who really she's the innocent here.
Yeah.
We understand what all of this means, so we don't need to have the face described to us like in words.
Yeah. It's almost like he can't describe it. Like the way Shirley is just, he keeps repeating the face, because he's looking at her and he's seeing this beautiful woman. I think the text describes her perfection, a perfection resplendent. Like this takes something, she was already beautiful as he describes it, but like this enhances her beauty in a way that he's not sure he can quite put a figure on how exactly, but it makes like she is resplendent on this day. Like this is the day she is going to destroy a woman's life for petty reasons, and she has never looked more beautiful, never looked more powerful. She's glowing, and he sees in that glow and that resplendence like the ugliness of it, the darkness of it, the pettiness of it. He sees the truth of that, and the other face in our two faces is the face of poor Lady Gwynthre, who has, upon her entrance, very quickly realized, based on the reactions to people around her, that she's been set up, she's been fucked over
Yeah.
and she's ruined, and he sees in this realization a different kind of beauty, and I think he sees in her innocence and and goodness
Yeah.
that he's not seeing in Grantham,
Right.
and that is again like the comparison between the two faces. And I love he's talking to this other woman who we meet at the very end, and like you said, the book, the short story, it's moving like 20 miles an hour. So we just meet this other woman, and it's just like Henry James is like, I need someone to be here for my character to bounce ideas off of as he's processing this stuff. And it's things like, but their face, and she's like, which one? And he goes, take your pick. I don't know. Like either way, like this is completely overwhelming me.
Yeah.
And he just gets the hell out of there.
I just remembered like what was going through my head when I was reading the part describing her, resplendent, glowing form, but with that darkness. I think you know what I'm going to say, Scott. It was in place of a dark lord, you would have a queen, because it's like this like dark, dark triumph that she's embodying. No, that's great. That the side character, I forget her name, the side character of the woman who's kind of the host. Great role there. I think there's even a sort of background element in terms of side characters where, I think you accurately describe the situation with Lord Gwenther, how it's like, wow, he really broke the rules by going, he dumped her and then he was like immediately married to this other girl. But then I feel like when you stand back from the whole story, you're like, well, he somehow correctly realized that she was awful, and then he found someone who was actually like just a good person, and then he was like, well, obviously you're just a good person, I'm just like, let's just get married. You do question his judgment in going back to her and letting her be the one to introduce her to society. It's not that I'm criticizing it as a story choice, you're just like, what was he thinking?
I think it's to try to be as charitable to him as possible. Like I think it's like a damned if you do, damned if you don't situation where like she is pretty high up in the hierarchy of society. And so like to just like show up and try to introduce your wife to this society with her being this heavily respected part of it, you're kind of fucked. And so maybe it's just like, we'll just roll the dice and see. And maybe like by him coming over there and like asking her to do this is like him trying to acknowledge that, hey, I recognize that I did a shitty thing. I'm trying to make it right here. Can you help me out? And maybe hoped beyond all hope that her saying yes indicated she was going to be okay with things.
Yeah.
I don't know why. Pretty naive of him to assume so. Yeah.
I mean, maybe he assumed that she wouldn't be so brazen, right? Like maybe he thought he was being clever and getting her in a catch-22 where it's like, well, if you fuck her over, everyone will know that you're awful, so you wouldn't do that. And then she's like, watch me.
Yeah, I mean, it is really interesting that like that is the truth, right? That just like we through that side character whose name we can't remember, it's very obvious that like everyone knows that she did this, that she fucked this girl. And I mean, it's a cruel irony of the way the society works is that they know this was done out of petty spite from Grantham, and yet they're still going to nuke this poor girl out of society forever for doing this, right? It's like if you didn't have enough common sense to realize that was an incredibly garish, over the top outfit, you don't get to be part of this thing. But we will acknowledge that you were set up by this terrible, terrible woman. Like I think that is maybe James is also just making a commentary on how kind of petty and cruel this kind of high society rules are.
I mean, I think there's a truth about social power that she's going to get away with it. Like it's not like it's going to be her downfall because everyone now realizes that she's awful. If anything, people are going to be like, okay, so don't piss her off because she will come after you.
And she's more beautiful than ever. She's more resplendent than ever. So I think she's going to be even more powerful. Yeah, like even more. I think in a fucked up way, even more well respected by the people around her. Yeah. It's awful. I'm glad Shirley got out of there. Good call, man.
Yeah, me too. That's the kind of silver lining, and that's yeah. I guess when I thought like really interesting thing about the story is how much of a non-entity he is. Obviously, intentionally, like he is the thinnest perspective wrapper of a character, right?
Yeah.
Like he doesn't have a character. None of this is criticism. It's just like it's a very it felt like a very clear choice to be like, you reader, you are Shirley.
Yeah.
Welcome. This is your he's passive. He's just like watching.
Hmm.
He's barely even reacting. He's giving his thoughts on things. He's not making choices though, right? He's just kind
Yeah.
of there.
The most active thing he does in the whole story is at the very beginning when he chooses to get the hell out of there as Gwenther shows up.
Yeah.
Where
Yeah.
he just chooses to say, "I'm leaving," and he pisses Grantham off when he does that.
Uh-huh.
Because they talk about it at dinner that later that night. She's like, "I told you to stay. Why didn't you stay?" And he was like, "Cause this is awkward as shit.
Yeah.
That's why." I also like, speaking of just like the individual moments of writing, I love the bit where Lord Gwenther comes into the room and acts like he knows Shirley
Uh-huh.
but
Yeah.
clearly doesn't.
Yeah. I almost thought that was a setup for some later twist where it was going to be like they had a plan between them, but no, it's just like he's kind of a
Just it's a reflection of both like the silliness of the society where you have to play that game, but also it allows us to get in the headspace of Gwenther, who I think is extraordinarily nervous to be going through this, that he's actually doing this whole thing.
Yeah, or maybe maybe the handshake is meant to convey like I'm doing you a favor, buddy. You're not going to see it for a few days.
Get out of here, man.
Yeah.
Yeah. Delightful little story. Very quick to read. It was actually called The Faces at first, and then he changed the name to The Two Faces. I don't know. I kind of like The Faces better.
Yeah, I mean, I think I kind of agree. I think the Two Faces carries with it the connotation of being two-faced.
Yeah,
which
I guess maybe works. Like she is kind of two-faced.
She's kind of two-faced. It kind of breaks the idea of like, no, it's literally about these two women's two different faces, but the connotation of her being two-faced, I think, is present anyway.
Yeah.
I wonder how old that phrase is. I have no idea. Whenever the Batman character was invented, right? That's where it came from, right?
Yeah, that's where it came from. It came from the character of Two-Face. Yes. I wonder what's the word origin of that expression? I bet it has a silly one.
Yeah, I mean, sometimes early 1600s is what Google says. But
yeah, that's when the Batman character was invented.
Yeah. I no longer trust anything that I find on the internet, unfortunately.
Yeah, no, that's where we are right now as a society. Yeah, we've come full circle. Remember when we were kids and we were doing research papers, and the teacher was like, "You can only use one source from the internet because the internet is not to be trusted." And then we all forgot about that for a few years. I feel like we're back there.
Well, we're back because the thing at the top of the page is literally made up. Although this thing does point out that like the god Janus or whatever is like the ancient two-faced god.
That would make sense, yeah.
But that's not necessarily, I mean, that's obviously not where the English phrase two-faced comes from. Anyway, I don't know. Interesting digression, but I don't actually know.
We'll never know.
We'll never know.
That does lead us, though, to our final story of the week. It is also our longest story of the week, and it is the earliest story that we've read so far. This one was published in Chapman's Magazine of Fiction in 1896. It's called The Way It Came. It was later renamed to The Friends of the Friends because Henry James hated the name. He hated the way it came. He's like, this is a stupid, simple, awful name, and I'm going to change it. I mean, I don't disagree. Like, I don't even think I fully understand the impetus for the name The Way It Came in the first place. Like, at least the Friends of the Friends, like, I get.
Yeah. What is the it that came?
Yeah.
And what are we referring to when we say the way in which it came? Yeah, I don't like the title either. I mean, it's very memorable for some reason. I found it a very memorable title, but
Mhm.
I don't know.
This was definitely my favorite story of the week of the three. I
Me,
really, really liked this one.
me too. It was my personal favorite. I think there's many reasons for it. One of which is probably it's just the most straightforward genre story. It's just kind of a good, solid, kind of creepy ghost story, linear. um, it also kind of manages to feel original, and I'll use the word again, fresh. Like
Mhm.
I'm almost surprised that we haven't seen this story adapted 6,000 times, because there's like a sort of effective dramatic kernel to it that you can imagine being adapted into a movie or something, even though it is a very
Sure.
short story. Um, this is the one where I wanted to talk about the framing, by the way, if
Yeah.
that's okay. Yeah. So just like the thing I notice about this story is if you were to just start it from the beginning of the story and not the framing story, then you would feel pretty disoriented and not really understand like what is this that I'm reading? You know, like on a very basic level, like what is this supposed to be? Who is this?
Yeah.
Where are we? Like the basic questions would stick with you for quite a few sentences, and there's a very high chance I think that, like we were talking about earlier, you would just bounce off, just be like, I don't care.
Yeah.
But the
Yeah.
the the couple paragraphs or whatever it is of framing context, they're kind of a promise of like, oh, this is a curious tale, and you know, um, it makes you interested in like, okay, so this is going to go somewhere,
Yeah.
and I'm kind of interested in this pitch, even though the pitch is very vague, and then that propels you enough to actually make it into the story.
Yeah, so for those that maybe don't remember, the framing story in this one is basically like an editor's note.
Mm-hmm.
An editor is publishing a story, which is a woman's diary entries that make up the bulk of the story, and he's just like giving it a preface of like, "Hey, I this story doesn't have any names. It doesn't have any time periods. There's no specific places. I don't know if any of this is real. It kind of sounds really crazy. But I'm gonna go ahead and publish it anyway. I probably shouldn't. I think it specifically says this is probably not publishable material, and yet obviously they did it in it anyway. I think it's very interesting because you like we talked about this with Turn of the Screw that had a framing story. We talked about you just talked about it here, but like the Turn of the Screw, the frame story in this one doesn't do what I would think a frame would typically do, which is that it sets up the beginning and then wraps around to it in the end. I
Uh-huh.
think in this one, being an editor's note, it kind of makes sense that there's nothing after the end of it. But I think ultimately, like, this is doing exactly what you were just talking about. Like, all of these stories are published in a magazine, right? It's not like you go to a bookstore and pick up a book and you see a cover and you read the back pamphlet and you have like a general idea of what type of story it is, maybe because you're in the genre, you're in the mystery section of the bookstore or the horror section of the bookstore. You're just flipping through a fiction magazine and you have no idea. You see it name and the name is the way it came, which just means nothing. And you have no idea what the story is. You have no idea, like, how do you hook a person in that story? And I think you're absolutely right. Like, this gives you just enough of a sampling of what type of story it is going to be, maybe the tone of the story, just enough that makes you go, okay, I'm in. Um, and I think that's exactly what this is doing.
Yeah.
Like, it just seems like it's solving a problem of like, I know what audience I'm writing to, and I know what I'm going to have to do to get them.
Yeah.
So much so that I wonder if Henry James sends a story into the magazine and the editor comes back with is like, no, do you need to write something at the beginning or no one's going to read this.
There's got to be like a meta, right? Like a meta game to writing short stories in the in the early part of the 20th century, late part of the 19th century, where I mean there still is, honestly. I think it's just probably slightly different meta.
Yeah.
Um, I kind of jumped in with my opinion before you had a chance to like introduce the story.
No, you're good. We did
Okay.
the framing story, and now we'll get into the story itself,
Okay.
which is, as we said, based on the framing story, diary entries. This is from an unnamed woman who was talking about two unnamed friends, both a man and a woman. Both of these friends have reported to have witnessed a ghost of a dead parent before that they found out that parent was dead. So, like, I think the woman was walking through a museum. She looks over, she sees her father there, and then later learns that her father has grown ill and died. I think the man sees his mother in his room or something. I can't quite remember.
Yeah.
And then later learns that his mother has passed away. And they tell those stories, and those stories kind of become this thing in the social circles that they all run in. And it becomes like this, oh, isn't it remarkable that we have these two people that have these two supernatural experiences and then it becomes like a thing built up as like, oh, we really need these two people to meet somehow. And then like everyone builds it up as like, oh my gosh, and they're so similar in every way, and they have the same opinions, and they dislike the same things, and they both have this weird thing where they refuse to be photographed ever. We need these people to meet, and like things just keep happening to prevent this from happening. It's some of it's like mundane, just miscommunication, or something else comes up, and then some of it's like catastrophic things happen that in the world and in the circle of friends that are preventing these two people from getting together. It just never happens. Later in the story, the narrator enters into an engagement with the unnamed man, and as part of her engagement, she conspires to finally get her fiance and her friend to meet. As soon as she does that, she goes, "Oh no, what if they like each other more than me? I should have waited until after we got married to do this." So she sends a note to her fiance saying the time changed, doesn't send a note to the other girl, so they miss each other. Then the woman dies, and we learn that she also visited her fiance the night that she died, but there's some disagreement on if she physically visited or if her ghost visited. And then she goes crazy and calls off the engagement because she's convinced her fiance is in love with the ghost. And that is the way it came.
And maybe he is.
And maybe he is.
Yeah.
I don't think so, but
I think it's definitely meant to leave open the possibility, but also like, yeah, we spent a lot of time in her head dealing with her paranoia, and yeah, very, very fun, very original, very the characters all felt so alive in this story. I think that was my favorite part. Like I love that, like the reasons why they could never meet. Yes, you're right that sometimes it was like, catastrophes would happen, but very often it was just like they were very strongly characterized, even through this sort of distant, like, woman writing a diary entry style, where it's like, well, he's just always busy and on the go and active, and he's just this like man of action, and then she's just this very particular person. I think we all know someone like this who's just like, they like things the way they like it,
and she's a homebody too. She doesn't really like going out and doing things.
And so it's just hard to coordinate when, interestingly, despite the fact that you get all these indications that they are kind of perfect for each other, they also are quite different in this particular way, and that's the thing that's keeping them from meeting, or it's one of the things keeping them from meeting, I guess.
I think that's a really great point, and it's like part of what I find so fascinating about the story is like the diary writer, and gosh, by the way, it's going to be so difficult to talk about the story since we decided to give none of these people names. The narrator is like pretty insistent, and it seems like her social circle is pretty insistent that these two people are just absolutely perfect for each other. And I'm reading this and I'm like, they both saw ghosts. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
They both don't like their picture taken. Okay. But the way you've described them is very different from each other.
Mm-hmm.
That like, they seem like they would like superficially get along about, hey, isn't it neat that we both saw the ghosts of our loved ones? But like on like the level of like personality, like intersection, maybe they wouldn't actually get along at all. But everyone's so convinced that they would.
That's an interesting thought. I kind of just like accepted when, the woman is described as just like, she's just so charming and she just charms everyone and everyone loves her. In fact, like, this is the thing about her, she's so charming and lovable that despite the fact that she's this homebody who really doesn't, I mean, she sounds like a huge introvert. Despite that, she, like, everybody just comes to her because they're like, we just love her so much. We love being around her. She's so fun. She's so
but
funny.
does charming make a successful marriage and lifelong partnership?
Yeah, probably not. I hear what you're saying. I think it's actually quite interesting to think. And okay, actually, I had this thought while reading it. I forgot until you reminded me. He just now that like they were like not meant to be together temporally.
Yeah.
The thing that they have in common is like this spiritual connection beyond the temporal, and they are meant to be together, but not in this world. They are meant to be together in the next world, and that's why it was fated that they not meet in this world, because and that's why she was right to dump him, because he would have left her in heaven. He would have been cheating in heaven, which is almost literally what she's worried about. So yeah, that's what she's paranoid. I think it's really great just to say right out what maybe we haven't said quite yet, is like, she's not really worried that her man is going to cheat on her. She's worried that he has this spiritual connection with another woman that's just infinitely beyond anything she could ever have with him.
Yeah.
And that's that's like a whole nother thing, right? That's a whole nother thing to be worried about than just like, oh, is he gonna mess around on me?
Yeah. I mean, totally, because the person that she thinks has come between their engagement is dead.
Yeah.
And not around. Yeah. I mean, like it is so fascinating. It's an ambiguity, because I think there is a read on the story that she's just 100% wrong about everything. And like, you can read it, like his reaction, but this is the Winona Ryder, Christian Slater of it all. Like, his reaction is so incredulous and like, what the fuck are you talking about? I was laughing out loud. Like, I think it's so funny that he's just like completely beside himself, and like you can see the looks on his face that he must be giving when she's going into these arguments. Like, what? And like, there's a point in the argument where he like basically admits to what she's saying, but like, if you're taking the interpretation of that she's just gone off the deep end, you could just have an interpretation that he's just like so besides himself by the absurdity of it that he's like, yeah, well, what if I am? What if I am actually in love with the ghost? What the fuck does that have to do with anything at all?
Yeah.
I still want to marry you, and like, it's so funny.
It's great. So I think this is another thing I was thinking about along these lines. So here's a completely mundane scenario. You're engaged to this guy, and you're getting along great. Everything's perfect. Everything's totally fine. And one day, like some ex of his comes up in conversation randomly, and instead of just him kind of like laughing it off, just being like, I mean, whatever, like, yeah, she was somebody I used to date. Instead of that, he like wistfully looks out the window. He's like, yes, yes, Elmira. That's kind of the vibe, is like, oh, you're still hung up on her, and that's now a huge problem, actually. And it wasn't 10 seconds ago. Now, the fact that this is a fantasy story and it's about a dead woman, to me, is taking that very mundane sort of situation that happens, I would say, often, and saying like, it's fantastical, it's elevated, it's exaggerated. Sure. But I feel like that was the emotional through line for me that was relatable.
Yeah, and one thing I love about it is it's kind of a self-fulfilling prophecy, because one thing they did is these people in this group, including the narrator, tried for so long and so hard to get these two people to meet each other that they kind of built them up in each other's minds of like, this person is perfect for you. This is everything you want. This woman is wonderful. She's exactly like you. She agrees with you on all the things. She's great. You would love her so much, that like you build this thing up and up and up and up and up in a person. And they kind of construct a version of you that may or may not actually be real. Like one thing that I find so fascinating about this example and the way the story differs from kind of that anecdote that you just told is he either met her for real for 15 minutes in which they didn't say anything to each other, or he just saw her ghost and learned nothing about her, doesn't know her at all, outside of what he was told about her from people. And that's it. So like, I mean, I think you are right that there is a read of this story that is just like, this is talking about some greater like soul level bond between people that is incalculable and understandable. And like, yeah, I mean, everyone's thought about it when they watch Titanic and Rose goes back to the Titanic after she dies and there's Jack there. And you're like, what about her husband, man?
Yeah. Where's your husband?
That guy she married and lived with for her entire life and had children with. Nope. And he's just waiting up in heaven, just like, where's Rose?
Yeah. She's on the Titanic, man. Sorry.
Yeah. But that is essentially exactly what this is, right? Yeah. Is that she has this fear that there is some ineffable connection that this man feels to someone or something else that she cannot compete with on any level. And she might be right? I mean, I think that is the fun ambiguity of it all, is that like she could be right. I mean, there is a moment where whose story was true, whether she visited him as a ghost or the real person, he is kind of taken aback by her, right? Like, like he is taken aback by her presence. Like if his story is to be believed, they just stood there staring at each other for 20
minutes, right? Yeah. I was going to bring this up, that regardless of which way is true, from his perspective, a woman came into his apartment. He knew who she was. She did this. She put her finger to her lips, which is already like, and then they just stared at each other and like admired each other for 20 minutes. That's so hot, man. That's so hot. Like if I was her, I would be so jealous. You know what I mean? Like, yeah. Like it's
she would have felt less bad if they had just banged.
Yeah, exactly. Her jealousy is totally understandable, right?
Yeah, no, I love this story. And I love that. Like, it's so funny because we have the story, and the setup of the story is that this is a man who saw a ghost, right? His kind of claim to fame in their circle is that years ago, after his mother died, he saw a ghost. And that's what they know him as. And there's no real indication in the story, maybe I'm just misremembering, of whether they like truly believe him or not with that. Like, I think one thing that's for sure is the narrator sees his fear of cameras as very silly, to the point where she like makes it a part of their engagement that he must sit for a picture. Just kind of like, I mean, he doesn't want his soul taken by the camera. Don't let him do it.
Yeah.
But then it's her that's arguing that it must be the ghost of this woman that appeared before you, rather than, and I guess like it's so interesting because I guess in her mind, if it's the ghost of the girl, then they do have some sort of like spiritual beyond the flesh connection that she can't compete with, right?
Yeah.
Whereas she seems, if it was, she just visited and did exactly what you said, just stood there longingly going, shh, while his butler banged the chick upstairs.
Right.
Loudly banged the chick upstairs.
Another detail I did not expect to find in this book from 1909, by the way.
1896. It was reissued in 1909. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Well, still,
it wasn't even the 20th century yet.
Even more so, right? Like I don't want to interrupt your thought, but like you kind of feel like you read a book like this and you're kind of expecting like Jane Austen, and it's like, no, this is first of all, this is later in history, and this guy is also just doing a different thing. Like he's being a lot more real. I don't know. I don't want to say Jane Austen is doing a very specific thing. I'm not coming down on Jane Austen. It's just like this is a kind of uh, um ugly honesty about humanity, and the
Yeah.
touch that like literally his butler was banging the chick upstairs felt so like this could have been out of like something from the 70s or 80s of
Yeah.
of the 20th century. I was just like
Yeah.
that's
It,
such
it,
a
it
detail.
it is this fascinating mesh of it, right? Because like it is old world in that he's living in this building, essentially an apartment building, but I don't even think they were calling them apartments.
Uh-huh.
Where there is like one manservant, like kind of responsible for a fair amount of them in the building, and it's like, how did she let herself in? And they're like kind of horrified by the fact that she would just go to this house and let herself in, which is this very archaic thing. But then like the reason why there wasn't someone there to let her in was because he's upstairs fucking that chick.
Yeah.
It like, I know we talked last week in the Turn of the Screw about how he's this author that bridges the gaps between like this literary realism and literary modernism thing, and I'm like, oh, this is it right here. I'm witnessing it. Really delightful. But yeah, I mean, like, I just think like, I think what's happening with me, and the reason why I'm maybe siding on more that just this woman as being entirely unreasonable is there does seem to be a trend, and let me know if you agree with this or not, amongst these stories. Like, I read after while we were preparing for the Turn of the Screw episode, I was reading a lot about Henry James and like, how he's depicted, and one of the things we said in last week's episode is that one thing that James does a lot is he writes stories about women, especially young women, kind of making their way through a society in which those women don't necessarily have a lot of control over their situation and control over their rights, and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And my 21st century interpretation was that as, oh, he's a pretty progressive guy. He's, very, very modernist, very feminist in that regard. Like, he's wanting to shine a light on different people. And like, here 4 stories in, I'm like, man, this dude writes about crazy women a lot.
Uh-huh.
A lot, to the point where I was like, is his like view on life is just like, man, girls are nuts.
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't know. Maybe not.
Well, I mean, definitely 2 out of 3. That's a solid description. And then in the 2 faces,
It's not that she's crazy. She's just a monster.
Yeah, she's just awful, right? She's evil. And then and then there's no women in the 3rd one, right? So,
Yeah.
At the 4th one, rather. So I get what you're saying. I mean, I think so. Okay, like it's funny, and I think there's something to it, and maybe he does feel that way. I do think like the fact that he writes from the perspective of the women in the case of the Turning of the Screw and this last one we just talked about, it's like even if they're crazy, there's a empathy.
Sure.
Like, we're not making fun of them. We're not like look at this ridiculous crazy person. Like, there's even when she is like she is self-aware of her own, she knows how this looks. Like, the way she writes the diary entry, she's like, I'm so ashamed of the way I behaved in this time. I was so stressed out. I was losing my mind due to the jealousy of thinking about this, and I had to call off the engagement. And basically, like, from top to bottom, I'm ashamed of this, but I did it, so I'm going to write about it. That's a really interesting way to frame the whole thing.
I like that. And even like thinking back a Turn of the Screw, like I do think there are moments of that book that it is making fun of her a little bit. But I mean, I think to try to be a bit more charitable to Henry James here, like, we are not necessarily saying that like, hey, aren't women innately crazy or terrible? But rather the world that they live in, the society they live in, pushes them to these extremes.
Mm-hmm.
In a world in which you lack so much power to control your own situation, the little power you have, you fiercely guard. And it's like, I understand this is a woman who is engaged to this man, and she's fiercely protective of that thing and her relationship with him. And it's like the one like this is her duty: get engaged, get married, have children. This is the thing that she's supposed to do. Society tells her. And so it's the thing she cares the most about. And this feeling of something between them, whether real or imagined, is inherently destructive to her.
Yeah.
And I think it's the same thing with the woman from Turn of the Screw as well. Like we talked about how this woman who wants to be in a relationship, wants to be with someone, wants to be doing these things, wants to be a mother, probably. We see reflected through how she takes care of the children. And the pressures of that and the lack of control in that kind of drive her mad a little bit.
Yeah, that's a great point. We do a lot with the institution of marriage and the lead up to it. In all these stories, like you just laid out the major points there. I would also add to that, the woman in this last story. So we've got, on the one hand, the engagement between the narrator and the man, and then we've also got the woman who starts out the story married to a man that she's estranged from. Speaking of things that I was kind of like surprised to read in a story of this vintage, it's like, obviously I know that this stuff happened in the past. Obviously, I just was surprised to see it depicted in fiction.
Sure.
Which speaks to my level of education. Obviously, not like whatever. The point is not. It's revealed later that like, oh, she has a scar next to her eye because her husband beat her, and that's why they're estranged. And it's like, oh holy shit! Like this is very kind of dark. There's a lot of darkness around the edges of this whole idea of the relationships in marriage, pretty consistently in his work, I would say.
Yeah. Especially, I mean, like, you wonder like what this woman was feeling and going through in this moment. Because I mean, like, so she has this friend who is our narrator, who has been telling her about this guy for literal years, and maybe even in a way, like, actually, one of the first time reading the story, one of the most surprising things about the story to me was when it kind of just casually goes, oh, and then this guy I've been talking about, he and I got engaged, and I was like, oh, whoa, like, I thought the whole thing with you trying to get these two people to meet was like y'all were trying to play matchmaker between these two people, and then on one side it turns out this woman was married to an abusive asshole the whole time. On the other side, it turns out I'm dating this guy and gonna marry him now. A little bit of a surprise, but like, you wonder what the woman is thinking. I mean, maybe she was thinking something along those lines. Is like, I thought you guys like were trying to set me up with this guy, and now you tell me that you're engaged to him, and now that you're engaged, we finally need you to meet. Like, that's got to be a little confusing and off-putting. And then he no-shows, right? And then does she find out her husband's dead, her estranged husband's dead after she gets home? I can't remember the timeline of that.
I thought it was before. I thought it was sometime before, but
I think you're right.
Yeah, I mean, I was thinking the text, I feel, nudges us to consider the idea that like this is a woman who is of a frail constitution and maybe has this heart problem.
Yeah, and
the stress that has been put on her with this final push is what pushed her over the edge, and basically, in other words, our narrator killed her, which the narrator doesn't really think to herself, but she does feel like, I really screwed this up, didn't I? She doesn't fully take responsibility for that side of it.
I think so. I mean, again, like, trying to put yourselves in the shoes of this woman, like, this is a meeting that has been built up over many a year, and now we're kind of being told it's finally happening. And she probably got it built up in her head a little bit. Maybe not from a romantic perspective, but just from a meeting a like-minded person who I will get along with, and kind of there's the excitement of that in my life. Like, you made the point that she's a homebody. She never goes anywhere. People have to go to her. She came out. You got her to come out and go to your house, and then he doesn't show up. Yeah. And the kind of the crushing disappointment of that.
And doesn't it specifically say that after she went to see our narrator, she went to like this woman's club,
Yeah.
which was apparently a thing, and just almost described as if like, and then she just sat there alone and stared into space for a while.
For hours. For hours.
For hours. And you're like, oh shit. Like,
yeah.
So she wasn't doing well. She didn't just go home. She just like, yeah. So I agree with you that I think we're meant to read between the lines and say like, maybe she had more writing on this than our narrator realized. Or maybe she even had this hope. I mean, maybe quite explicitly she was thinking like, this is all that's left for me is this guy. Everybody keeps telling me I got to meet this guy that I have this spiritual connection with. And it's I guess it's never going to happen. And she kind of gives up, you know?
Yeah. Or she goes to his house in the middle of the night and stares at him for 20 minutes.
Yeah.
And then goes home and dies.
Yeah. Because either the stress was too great or she was just finally happy and could just die.
It has to be a ghost, man. Like it just has to be like, I just like the situation to arrange itself where she just goes there is so absurd to me.
Yeah.
That like it's so funny that like we read The Turn of the Screw and I'm like, there's no way there's actual ghosts in this. And then this I'm like, there's gotta be a fucking ghost here, man. The alternative is just wild to me.
Well, I love the depiction of the argument between the narrator and the fiance where they're like, it just comes down to a matter of like, look, they say they don't actually know when she left the women's club. It could have been anywhere within this time period. And she's like, it was definitely later. It was definitely later. And then she went home and then she died. And that's when she went to see you. Yeah. And it's just, and it's like, look, and he's like, look, okay, we're never going to figure it out. We're never really going to know. So let's just, you know, you can just again. I love the Christian Slater Winona Ryder where they just, I can see them having this argument. We're never going to figure it out for sure. So let's just stop talking about it.
And she ultimately goes, okay, but like, as you said, there's an honesty to her stuff where she recognizes her being unreasonable. And one of the things she specifically says is like, I want my way to be true because I like it better. I like it. Like, I like that better that way. And he wants the other way to be true because he likes it better that way. Yeah. And so we've just both decided on our own truth. And we're never going to see eye to eye, or we're never going to be convinced because this is the way we want it. And that's it. That's all there is. And she can't let that go. Yeah. And he's just like, I know we already talked about it, but the moments where he's just besides himself at like the absurdity of the conversation that they're having is like, it's wild.
Yeah. It's great. It's such a good story. Like
it is such a good story.
This is what I mean when I said at the beginning, like I'm surprised that I haven't seen some adaptation of this, because it's like, I mean, it's like if a Seinfeld episode was a ghost story, right? It's like it's funny, it's absurd, but it's also kind of creepy and poignant at the same time. It's like the perfect story in that way.
Yeah. Yeah. I did want to talk about the choice to not name any of these characters, and this is now something we've had in 2 stories because the governess in The Turn of the Screw was unnamed as well. And that's like definitely a choice, right? Because like if you're just indifferent to names, like you're just like your writer is like, I don't really care what these people are named, then you just give them names,
right?
And you move on. The choice to specifically and explicitly not to name them feels like an intentional choice. And I'm just wondering if you have any take on why James does that.
I didn't think about it. I've got a couple thoughts, I guess, off the cuff. You know, it kind of makes it feel more authentically like a diary or like a situation where this woman is actually ashamed and actually trying to hide the identities of the people involved so she doesn't hurt them, which strikes me as being something you might do if you were actually ashamed.
Sure.
I don't actually know, slight tangent, I guess, but I don't actually know what the norms were around the publishing of diaries, because you know you always hear about like, you know, the published diaries of some great American founder or whatever, and that's that strikes us really interestingly nowadays, because like anything that I would personally call a diary, first of all, I don't have a diary because I have a podcast, but if if I had a diary, I would think of that as my private, for me, that would be on Google Cloud somewhere. It wouldn't be published upon my death. Like it
Yeah.
and so, but it seems to me like in the past people didn't think about it that way. Maybe people thought about their diaries as like, this is actually for posterity. Um I don't
I
know,
don't know.
but maybe that's part of it, is like, to go back to what I was saying, like maybe in the old days people would anonymize things in a diary on purpose, knowing that other people would read them in 20-30 years. Just a
Yeah.
guess. I don't know, just a thought.
So do you think that's just an affect that James put in this story specifically because of that framing device? Or is there a larger choice behind it?
See, that's that again, like I said, I had a couple thoughts. The other thought was like, if you don't name a character, there's an argument to be made that it makes it easier to slip into the character or to project people onto the characters.
Mm-hmm.
For example, we don't really get physical descriptions that I can think of like,
No.
so that again, I found myself like projecting certain people that I know or certain faces kind of onto these characters, and maybe that was made slightly easier by the fact that there's no names, there's no descriptions, they're blank
Yeah.
slates. So that on a sort of empathic level is maybe why he's doing it. But I don't really know. Those are kind of the two things that I thought of. But did you
Yeah.
have any thoughts on that?
No, I mean, it's one of those things that I ask a question hoping you have an answer and don't really know. I think it's. I'm kind of curious if we see this pop up again in another story, because it's like two makes a pattern, three makes a trend, right?
Mhm.
It's like we just so happen to have read The Turn of the Screw, where there's one unnamed character and it happens to be the governess, which again, like the framing story of this one, we are reading something the governess has written down. She obviously would not say, "Hello, my name is Jane. Here
Yeah.
is my story." And
Okay.
so it makes perfect sense why we wouldn't get her name in that format. And here again, it would make sense why we don't get the narrator's name. And I think you're right that it seems like a conscious choice to not name these two people for the sake of privacy and things like that. So yeah, if we get to the point where we read another story and there's more unnamed characters, I'm like, yeah, I wonder if there's something that James just prefers in anonymity and in how the brain characterizes people and how he files, because I mean, there's definitely a thing your brain does when you're being introduced to characters, right? Where if the characters have names, then you're filing them away as a name. It's like you have an emotional attachment to a name, and you learn that name, and you connect that name with the things you have. If that is stripped away from you, you have to find a way to deposit your emotional feelings and the descriptions and the understanding to something else. What is it? What is that thing that you file your brain in under it as? And just so that's kind of a fun experiment. And I don't actually know. Like as I was saying that, I was trying to think back of like how did I separate these people in my mind, and what was the triggering word or phrase or description or thing that accessed that memory file. I don't even know, but of course it happens. Like it happens without thinking about it. But I wonder if it's an effort to manipulate that or explore that.
Mm-hmm. I like that. I like that a lot. As you were talking, I was thinking about like when I approach a news story. I mean, this happens a lot in the context of like if you're going to be writing flash fiction, it's like, well, you got to decide pretty quick what to name your character, or if they even need a name, because in many situations it's just like there's a dude there, literally there's only one character, so how could his name possibly matter? And then
Mm-hmm.
sometimes it's like, well, maybe if you name him Mr. Pumpernickel or something, it's like, well, you've told me information about him, immediately by telling me his
Mm-hmm.
name because of the way you have chosen to name him.
Yeah.
Or but if his name was Bob, then it's like I mean, you've told me that he's maybe you're meant to think of him as generic because that's kind of a no offense to the Bobs out there, but that's the name you would choose in a fictional context to be like he's Bob. What do you want me to say?
Yeah.
And so like every name says something. That's one way to say you're kind of talking about like what bin does it fit in? If it's like, well, I don't want to suggest to you a bin. I want you to kind of have to figure that out. So I'm not going to tell you if his name is, you know, Mr. High Class or Mr. Low Class or Mr. Name you associate with being a clerk or whatever
Yeah.
associations existed in the 1800s. It's just he's this guy. He's
Yeah.
always running around. He's really attractive and cool, and everybody likes him. And he's energetic. And
Yeah.
I suddenly I'm going to marry him. Sue me, you know.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. Yeah. That's a great point. I don't even know if we know what he does, which I don't think matters, but
he's a man about town.
yeah, there you go. All right. Anything else you wanted to say about the friend of the friends, aka the way it came? Do you think? Have you gotten to the bottom of the name after this discussion? Maybe it being the ghost, maybe it being the events of the breakup of the engagement. I don't know.
Yeah, literally. So the only thing I got is like the way the sentence would be like the way it came about that they finally did meet, like they or just like
oh yeah. No, I think you're right. That's what it is. Yeah,
which we don't even know because we don't know if she's alive or dead in the meeting. So
yeah.
Um,
all we know is poor Rose's husband. That's all we know.
Yeah, that's. Oh God, I love the story even more after talking about it with you. I love the story. This is like
I love the story.
I already really liked it before we sat down to talk about it, but like, what a good story.
Yeah, I'm like in a really good place right now. Like, I think we talked about this a little bit last week, but I knew we were going to have to read The Turn of the Screw before we got into Bly Manor. And I kind of, on a whim, said, oh, all of these short stories have titles in Bly Manor, so we should read those. And like, I've been kind of nervous and worried about that since I made that decision of was that the right decision? Are any of these short stories going to have anything to do with the television show we're about to watch? By the way, still don't know after reading these 3 short stories, don't have enough specific memories of The Haunting of Bly Manor on recall right now to say definitively or not. But I also don't care right now because I'm just like, yeah, this was the right decision, because even if all it gives us is just like a greater understanding of James and his themes, which I think will ultimately help see the way in which Flanagan chooses to interpret The Turn of the Screw, I think it will just give us more weapons, more tools in order to understand and parse that. And outside any of that, like, I'm just having a lot of fun reading these stories.
Me
so
too.
yeah, it's been great so far. We've got 5 more short stories after this. Next week we're going to do just one. I think the longest one outside of Turn of the Screw is a short story called The Pupil. That's what we're going to be reading next week, and then we've got 2 more each week after that, and then we'll be ready for Bly Manor. But right now I'm feeling pretty good.
Me too.
Yeah. So I think that moves into our discussion question of the week, because we want to know what you guys are thinking.
Yeah. How are y'all feeling about Henry James? That's it. That's the discussion question. Just let us know.
I mean, I think by the time people are listening to this episode, they will be 4 short stories into it, just like we are. By the time we are reading the responses to this question, we will be near the end of it. We'll be on episode 4 of our short story collection. So I think that'll be perfect timing of looking. It's like, how are we feeling about this? I think this was a good choice for you and me. Was this a good choice for the audience? Well, let's have the audience tell us.
Yeah.
So cool. And then I think next episode we will read what people think of The Turn of the Screw. So we'll get to go back to that again.
Sounds good.
All right. That is going to do it for us this week's. Next week, as we said, just one story, The Pupil. I think it's about 70 pages long. Of course, that depends on what edition and font size and yada yada yada. But it's on the longer side, but I don't think it's significantly longer than the amount of stuff we would normally read week to week.
Yep. I'm going to switch up the outro a little bit. Just to remind everybody to check out doofmovies.com. Before they go, check out doofmovies.com. Vote for your favorite movies of the 2020 of the 2000 of the
you can do it
of this century, of the 2000th century. No, anyway, just it's fun. It's easy to do. You'll have your list. You can look at what other people have voted for. I tried to make it real easy. Tried real hard. So, I look forward to seeing everybody's votes. And with that being said, that discussion question, you want to answer that discussion question, you can head on over to reddit.com/r/doofmedia and leave a comment on the thread for this episode. And of course, you can check out every episode of Flanagan's Wake on YouTube.
Yeah. Speaking of YouTube, I think when we recorded our episode last week, we had not released our Dr. Sleep episode over there yet. So we couldn't say it on that episode, but man, we had some issues with that one. Warner Brothers did not like us showing any of that movie whatsoever. So that episode is on YouTube right now. If you want to watch it, it is a heavily edited mode in order to make Warner Brothers happy with us. So we had to kind of edit down a lot of the clips and stuff we use there. I still think it works, but that's the frustration with dealing with YouTube. But if you want to see the video in its full, unadulterated form, Spotify has it right now. We want you guys to go to YouTube. We like YouTube. YouTube has been good to us, but if they're gonna block our stuff, we gotta go elsewhere as well. Yeah. So Spotify has the video right this very minute.
That's right.
Yeah. And if you want to get some merch, the merch store has that right this very minute. Head over to doofmedia.myshopify.com and get any of the available merchandise. Gosh, what do I want to plug? Let me just open the store right now and see what we got on tap. Oh man, the Cup of Stars Hill House latte mug. It's that's the best, isn't it?
I think that is the best. Yeah.
I'm not using it today because I used it yesterday and it's dirty, but that's like my favorite mug right now. Especially I used to drink coffee at night, which probably not a great idea. Not only for caffeine purposes, but for digestive purposes, probably bad. I switched to tea and it's been delightful. And my Cup of Stars mug is perfect for my evening tea. And could be for yours too. doofmedia.myshopify.com.
I love it.
I think that was a pretty good pitch there, Matt.
I agree.
If I don't see one person buying this mug after this episode comes out, I'm gonna be really upset.
I know. Well, I'm gonna go buy it right now.
You haven't bought the mug?
I haven't bought the mug.
Shame.
Yeah, I know. We already talked about the Patreon and the doofmovies.com. That's it. Instead of the Patreon, I'm going to tell you to go to doofmovies.com because that's the place to do things.
What a pitch. We already talked about the Patreon.
I don't need to talk about it
Give
anymore.
us some money.
No, just do the fun voting thing.
Yeah,
it's fun.
But also the money.
The money, though. Seriously.
Ethan, the money. Why did my brain go to Mission Impossible? But you knew the scene I was talking about.
I did.
Of course, if you cannot afford to donate right now, that is absolutely okay. You can always help us out by leaving rating and reviews on all of the available platforms that have them. I don't have a new review to read this evening, unfortunately. But we do see you guys that continue to send those in. We do appreciate it. Also, as Matt said, leave comments in places. Leave comments on YouTube if you're watching on YouTube. Even if they're just like your random thoughts as you go through the episode, if something pops into your head, we love it all. Do that on Spotify as well. The algorithms love comments, and therefore So do we.
That's yep.
All right, folks. That's going to do it for us this week. We hope you're enjoying Henry James. We'll find out in a couple weeks if you're enjoying Henry James, but I hope you are enjoying it as much as we are because we're having fun with this. So tune in next week for another short story, another riveting conversation, which I have no idea what this one's even about. Is it going to be ambiguous? Is it going to be supernatural? I don't know.
Yes.
I don't know.
No, I don't know. We'll see.
All right. We'll see you back here next week for Henry James, The Pupil. Until then, rest in peace, Mr. Flanagan. You smile every time. Like, I can't.
It makes me happy.
It's just, I know he's listening.
I know.
From beyond.
That's what makes it fun.